Guys, did you enjoy the Hyperloop discussion? Yeah, it was great. Well, welcome, welcome. If you guys haven't had a chair, there's some seats out here. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to the next discussion. It's a lineup of Internet of Things debate. And we are joined with Marius Montan. He's the CTO of IoT Partners. All right, give a round of applause, guys.
Yes, see, hello. Okay, first of all, thank you for being here. And just let me introduce our speakers today, that are Anthony, Winke, Svetlana, and Mark. Please come here. Just. Yeah. Okay, again, thank you for being here today. To you too.
Thank you.
And let's start talking about what is LP1 and let's try to do some rumble, let's do some fight, some discussion, some interesting discussion, of course, and peacefully. So the first few minutes will be for introducing yourself and your company. Don't know who's first. Maybe ladies first.
Yeah.
Sure.
So,
Hi,
Svetlana.
Svetlana Grant. I am the director for the IoT program in the GSMA. For those of you who do not know who the GSMA are, one part of us are the organizers of the Congress, but the part in which I sit are the programs dedicated to specific technologies and markets. So specifically, it is the Internet of Things. And for quite a few years now, we have been working on this new beast, the low power wide area technologies, the purpose-built for IoT markets, very low data throughputs, extended batteries, extended ranges, and specifically we work on NB-IoT and LTM. We run the mobile IoT community for companies who want to design, build, and build this market up, make this market big.
Good, thank you. So in order, so
Yeah.
Anthony.
For sure. So hi everybody, I'm Anthony. I work at Sigfox. So I'm the head of the startup relations. So what I do is that we help all the entrepreneurs who have ideas and projects, and we help them to go to market with these ideas. And Sigfox is actually a technology. We are deploying a whole optimized network for IoT. So really, low power, wide area, etc. We are present now in 60 countries. We cover today more than 1 billion people already with the network, and we have multiple millions devices connected already on this network. So that's what we do.
Good. Winke.
So my name is Winke Gieseman. I'm a co-founder and CEO of the Things Industries, and we help people all around the world building their own low power wide area networks with the technology called LowEnd. We now operate more than 10,000 base stations that provide this type of connectivity across more than 100 countries. And our approach to LPWA, low power wide area networks, is that with LoRaWAN you can build the networks yourself, and you can get full control over the quality, and you can pick and choose your vendors, whatever you like.
Okay, Mark.
Sure. Well, my name is Mark Fabregas. I'm the CEO and founder of Always Communications. We create technology using the WISE protocol. The WISE protocol is also an LPWA protocol, quite new. The name is quite new actually, but the protocol is pretty old, being used for a long time for especially utilities, working on the frequency band of 169 megahertz. And we in Always create the hardware that enables you to, from now on, create devices connected using that technology in the IoT space.
Okay, so thank you very much for your short introductions. And I think that we can start with a very basic and simple question to ask, maybe some complex question to answer, is that right now, what is the typical use case that your companies are focusing or are your main business, let's say? Because we heard or we read a lot of different possible use cases and business, etc. But at the end, we have we we don't have a lot of devices in the field that we thought maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So right now, what is the core of, or what is the main use case that the people is using these kind of networks?
So, yep. You want to start?
Sure. I mean, the list is very, very long. But if you think about the kind of the core low power wide area use cases, those are the ones that really need extended coverage, whether it's deep in underground or whether it's outside in the countryside. And the use cases that use the batteries that need to last 10 years plus. So those are the ones that have come first to the providers of the solution. So, you know, if we look, it's still very early stages, but if you look at those that, for example, created volume for mobile IoT, for NB-IoT and LTM, a lot of connected meters of all sorts, water, gas, electricity, even those that are connected to mains, they can still benefit from using little bit of power. Asset tracking for mobile IoT in particular, a lot of the assets that travel, that move around are those that are looking to the availability and the ability to move from network to network, so it's quite a wide range. And actually, we are now seeing kind of this little migration to the long tail. So it's everything: agriculture, sensors, in hives. So we're showing a beehive with live bees in the connected cities. So things like that. Some of the use cases that have never used connectivity before, and those are the main ones that are going to start building up the volumes. And there were some numbers already quoted. I mean, we're talking millions of devices already. So for mobile IoT, we are looking at hundreds of millions that have already been added. It's those big companies that are starting to come and get these solutions. But increasingly, it's that long tail that really are looking at some creative and innovative approaches.
Yeah, so it's actually kind of similar. I mean, Sigfox is here since actually a long time. So, we pioneered into this, LPWA, and so we saw this first use case coming. For us, we think that 60% of our market today is actually supply chain, so asset tracking, etc. Because if you think about it, LP1 is really optimized for it. The network is everywhere, and an asset can be really, can move, and we can track it with very small devices, with small batteries. It can keep up like 5-10 years of battery life without changing it. So it's perfect for like trolleys. It's perfect for pallets, for containers. For example, Michelin announced that they are tracking their containers worldwide with Sigfox. So even this kind of use case are very, very interesting. So asset tracking, supply chain is for us, it's a big, big part, and we see a lot of security as well. Is that Sigfox in particular is really used as well as a backup solution when other technologies are not working properly, etc. And so we see a lot of these use cases. For example, in the homes, our biggest customer is Securitas Direct. Maybe you already have Sigfox at home in your security place. So this is a big part in car trackers. If GSM is failing, they actually go to Sigfox. So security for us is a big, big part. I don't know if you know this provider, but in France we have this internet provider called Free. They do set-top box, and provide you internet at home, and they actually made Sigfox available in the boxes. And so they have, they literally have fiber optic on the box, but they put Sigfox just in case that internet is down, power is down, or all of these use cases. This technology is so cheap to implement, and it works so easily that actually it's worth actually making it happen as a backup. So we see a lot as well on this, security, use case and connectivity as a backup use case for us. If this is, this is an issue, let's say, with LP1 is a margin. That with the money we make with this connectivity, we talk millions, but we talk of millions of few euros per year. That's one of the big good thing with technology like this. It doesn't cost a lot, but we need a lot of them. And so these kind of use cases are very made for it. And now he has a long tail. That's literally my job at Sigfox. I handle all the startups, and I've seen so many new use cases that were completely impossible before, enabled by this technology. Agriculture is a must. For beehives, I have 12 partners who do exactly the same kind of thing. 12 beehive companies. It's quite funny. And yeah, so many use cases actually coming in just because of what you can do with these new technologies.
Yeah, so We have a lot of customers in different segments. So just to go a bit one by one, agriculture, for instance, putting connectivity on a farm that's far away. We're going to connect this year 10,000 cows in New Zealand, setting up in a remote area a few gateways with a satellite backhaul, tracking these cows, and providing a very interesting cost model that has a right capex opex balance, because you invest in the infrastructure yourself, which is fairly cheap, and then you can run it and make sure it runs at low opex. We're working with companies that measure the moisture of soil, also in agriculture. We are facing a water crisis. It's going to be a huge topic in the next 10 years. There's just more water being used than we currently are producing, and making sure that that farmers can be very aware about their water consumption. Then we see in building and facility management, so setting up a gateway in a building. We now have a gateway that is a base station with a range of a few hundred meters of $70. Put one in a building, you can literally connect thousands of devices. So we have one of our customers is WeWork, is a co-working space company in the US. We're going to put these gateways in their offices, and are measuring the occupancy of the co-working spaces. So you see in building management a lot of stuff, and also a lot of different use cases. And facility management, so we have smart mousetraps. If you place mousetraps in any Western country, you have to check the mousetrap every few weeks if there's a mouse. When you make it smart, you only have to go to the mousetrap when a mice are caught, and you can save a large OPEX on your field force. So there's a lot of efficiency you can gain there. And more and more what also you see in logistics, not really in the way that Sigfox does it, but more as an extended RFID kind of types, that you place your gateways on your critical points of presence and distribution centers, and you know where are your goods. And basically, I think what's interesting about that the real world of IoT, and it's being framed as one market. Well, what's the definition of market, right? So there's so many data points in the world out there that if we would know them, we would have so many new opportunities, so many new efficiencies. And we're just a bunch of guys that are trying to unleash all the data around us in a very responsible way. And I think I mean, you talk passionate about it, and I think that's also we're trying to do. We're unleashing all this value, and it's really interesting to see how these different technologies are able to unleash different segments. But I really find it almost arrogant to say that there's like an IoT market, right? There's this world of things, and we're just throwing technology at it to see if we can make a better world. And and that is I think that's a bit what we do, and really focusing on these use cases is what makes it a lot of fun.
Well, in the case of the WISE protocol, obviously because the waste is mostly coming from the metering industry and the utilities, especially water and gas, it's where we have the best use case right now. So we are talking about 3 million of devices already deployed and working metering in the metering industry, and a rollout actually planned for the next 2 years of 11 million of devices. Actually, I think it's quite of the biggest IoT networks in terms of the devices connected. But this is what we are coming from. Actually, the possibility to create the WISE protocol came from a change on the regulation of that frequency band, that low frequency band, that now enables to connect other kind of devices more in this IoT idea, right? So I think that because of the particularities of our technology, we are targeting mostly industry, where there is a lot of interferences, and the low frequency band we use can make it better. We are also targeting agriculture, especially in those areas where maybe there is not coverage yet. So it's quite difficult to compete with the other protocols where there is existing coverage, right? So some of the use cases where there is no coverage yet, like agriculture, can be an option. And of course, because the utilities that are using these devices, these metering devices, are mostly in cities, I think that cities is also, smart cities is a good application for us because the infrastructure is already there. So once the operators that are now creating infrastructure can free it for using for IoT, it will become a good use case for us.
Good. And then, so the next question is, what do you think that are the main issues or main problems that new people starting with this kind of technologies they need to fight or to solve? In the meaning that, I don't know, if there's some kind of technical barrier or technical wall, meaning that I can understand this, or it's a matter of the business model of the providers, or maybe there's no problem at all. I don't know. Maybe we can start at the reverse.
Okay. Well, in my experience, technology, it's always a barrier, especially when talking about IoT, because IoT, it's quite complex. Technology is not just about talking about hardware. There is a lot of things that compose the value chain of IoT. But my experience is actually the technology can be difficult to understand, but it's already there and it works. So the main problem, in my experience, coming from the business models of the people who wants to create connected devices, because connecting devices, it's not free. Requires hardware, requires sometimes fees for using an operator, and if you don't have a business model that return this investment, it doesn't make sense to connect anything. And in the current space, in the way I see the IoT right now, there is still a lot of people who is willing to connect things without thinking on monetizing that connection. And this is something that starts as a pilot, but soon it finished because there is no way to sustain that idea. The projects that are still working are those ones that really, the data that they are gathering create value for them.
Yeah, because at the end, there are a lot of people that is laughing at us, saying that it's not Internet of Things, that is Internet of Pilots, no? Because there are a lot of pilots around, but there are few real applications, or there are a lot of applications, but
the pilots actually is a good way to start when we are managing a technology that it's quite new for a lot of companies. For me, IoT, it's changing paradigms in the way that a lot of companies are doing business, because till now they were working on offline world, and now we are enabling them to work on an online world where they know in real time what is happening in their businesses, in their relation with the customers, in their facilities. So the best way to start such a big mindset shift is with a pilot. The point is that the pilot, if there is not a business model made before, it will dead.
Yeah. That's I totally agree with of course you start with a business model, some kind of business case you have in mind, and I can confirm, like most of the POCs fails, and also a lot of times on criteria you came up with along the way. So basically, what you should see as a POC is not something that it's a test or experiment. It's also a learning curve, and you must always I think you can say for sure that at least 99% of your first POCs will fail. So what's our responsibility then as an industry is that we need to educate and make sure that the common mistakes are not made. So we created an organization called the Things Network, where we allow people to easily work with generic hardware and generic sensors to already start experience this in a very short time frame. So basically what we say is that you can build a prototype in an hour and a proof of concept in a day. And we have that for NB-IoT, and Sigfox has that as well. And I think it's our responsibility to make sure that we save the integrators and the product builders a lot of time with trying out all the different technologies to see if it fits. And it's really a learning experience. It's not that I could define a hypothesis because you will find out along the way new things, new opportunities. So, yeah, getting started is I think what we all try to do. And then the second part of the education, and what we're trying to take very seriously, is that when we guide people into POCs, we educate directly already about like how would it look like at scale, and basically also directly the security layers that need to be that need to be implemented, and in how they could be configured. And for us, the easier we make it, the easier we make sure that nobody makes the common mistakes, the more data points we can unleash, and the bigger this huge IoT dream can be leveraged.
I mean, I think they are actually both right, and the problem and that we see it since the very beginning, is that people often start with the technology. They actually start the wrong way. When you start with, okay, I have this technology, I'm trying to do something with it, that's 100% sure that you're going to fail. And for us, it was even worse. I mean, we were the first one to go, and so we had to pave the road, and try stuff. Everybody wanted to try Sigfox, and okay, just try. And POCs, yes, they fail. So now what we do is that we don't do POCs anymore at all. When the customer comes, we say, okay, what is your problem? What is the issue that you have? Explain to us. Okay, we'll talk about the technology, what we can do at the complete hand of it. So tell me how much pallets you lose. Tell me, how much like Airbus or like Peugeot. Tell me how much spare parts you lose every year, and then we know what kind of solution we can apply to your problem. But if you start with the technology and you start with the device building on stuff, I mean, if you're an engineer, it's cool. I mean, it's new stuff. It's like toys, so it's fun. But the issue is that it completely kills projects. So we really try to take it the other way around. We start with business units. We don't talk to innovation guys anymore. Business units which have a problem, tell us what it is. We'll help you to find the best solution, the best thing for your problem, and then we'll implement it. But it's really, really important that technology. I mean, it's just a way to do things. But the more important part is really what you solve with it. It's not the technology itself. And the title of the debate is like, let's get it to rumble. I mean, between technologies. And I mean, this is a problem actually we have, is that people are trying for too long to compare technologies and, okay, LoRa does that, Sigfox does better than that, etc. But we don't really care about that. Look at what it can do for you. Does it fit? Is the price is good? Yes, and go for it. Don't really, it's really, really funny to see how people are really like religious about it, when you shouldn't do. You really should focus on what's your problem, because if you're too focused on technology, you're going to fail. And we've seen that hundreds of times, and that's it. And for us, the technology that we, LPWA, is more like a kind of a new market that you can address. We deployed all these antennas around the world, etc. You have to think about it like when Apple launched their App Store. They made an App Store available on phones, and at once, you had these developers who can actually sell their application to millions of people. For us, actually, this is kind of the same opportunity. You have like a market which is covered by Sigfox. You can just put like a small chipset in your device, and you send it everywhere. It's gonna work. So this is more, the way we actually address it. See it as an open market. See it as a new opportunity. Don't see it as another technology that you can try to POC with, etc. Don't look at it that way. So for us, it's really, really important to focus on the customers itself, and then we help them. But that's the other way around.
Yeah, well, we actually see a very similar thing. So the companies that come to us already know what it is. They know how it works generally. They know that the modules, devices, dev kits are available. And in many cases, it's the question, so, what's it going to do for my business? Is it going to improve my ROI? And a lot of times we can see that, there are a lot of big, complex sensors that are installed out there, and they're looking to kind of understand what can they do to improve the way to track in more locations, for example, track in real time, track on the moving objects. So we've done, for example, some projects with the cities on the air quality measurements. And so they've always had these huge, complicated sensors that measure quite a wide variety of chemicals. And what they found is that if they put the moving sensors on the delivery vehicles, for example, they can benefit from more readings all around the city. And the price difference is amazing. You know, you're looking at a 10 times decline in the overall cost of what they can afford, so they can deploy a lot more. So for them, it's, you know, it's an improvement in service. It's the availability that is much better. But sometimes, you know, these are the people who don't necessarily kind of think through what might be possible for them. So yeah, we're the same. We invite them to the labs. We've got a number of IoT labs where they can come, and they're sort of business accelerator type of places. They can understand, test what's possible in different conditions. Another thing we find is that companies don't always know how to take advantage. So they know, yes, they put the you know, the module in and it's ready to go. But what they don't understand is that sometimes on the application side, they actually need to set it up, take advantage of the optimization features to make sure that the battery lasts longer. So actually we find that we do need to have chats with them and explain, and we try to kind of publish the way things should be set up. So it's now properly hands-on. Where I think we need to do a lot more work is the security, and that again comes to that there is a lot of will and a lot of interest, and a lot of devices go then on the market without necessarily being fully secure by design, right? What you hear. So what we are trying to go through our ecosystem and to, again, do the security masterclasses and explain this is how you set up. And there are some basic principles. So Etsy just published the IoT consumer security standard, which is great because I think it is the device manufacturer's responsibility. It is not up to a consumer who has no idea. You know, they've maybe set up their Wi-Fi access points that everybody else can use, right? They don't really know. So they need a little bit of help. And I think that the responsibility is on these guys who come to us and they push these products into the market that need to be fully set up and foolproof. They need to be completely ready to go without any loopholes, without any backdoors, without any simple passwords and things like that. So I think that's where we can see a lot of need to educate, you know, encryption mechanisms, things like that. I mean, some simple things that they can implement. So I think as actually the industry, we need to make an effort to make sure, because if it doesn't happen and if it starts getting bad reputation, it just won't happen. People will get scared and they will step back. The big companies will always, you know, test. They've got big IT units. They can test the security and all of that. But it's the smaller companies that rely on the kind of the providers of the modules, networks, and so on that really need to get that help.
So we can start thinking of these kind of technologies like commodity networks, in the meaning that you can take whatever network you want, let's say, and use it. Because I think that there are some, or we can find some parallelism with the first internet, let's say, in the 90s, in the meaning that we have different connectivity options, in the meaning that we have Ethernet, we have token ring, we have difference. And they were, of course, incompatible, etc., and was very, let's say, handmade everything, in the meaning that if I want to publish my first retail store, I need to build from the scratch entirely, etc., and 20 years later, we have a lot of commodities, let's say, for the internet. I mean that everybody's using Ethernet, everybody's using Wi-Fi, everybody's using fiber optics, and that's all, let's say. And we have a lot of software that is very standard, etc., etc. Do you think that we are here with these kind of networks? We will be here in 5 years. We never will be in this kind of situation with the networks. What do you think about that?
I mean, to be honest, today we are at the very beginning of it, you know. And if you think about it, since the beginning of internet from today, like there was a lot of software revolution. You know, before you used to code everything by hand and do HTML by hand, which was a nightmare. Now you go on Wix.com and you have a website ready in 5 minutes. But to achieve that, we had to build all these actually tools to make it happen. And I think right now in the hardware world, because we talk about Internet of Things, I mean, you need things to make it happen. And as of today, it's still a very complex world to do. You know, you still need the same tools to build hardware, etc. And for me, it's still too complex. If you want innovation, you need to make it as easy as possible for everybody to be able to build a device because he has an idea. The guy, for example, you know, I don't know, he's a beekeeper. You know, that's what we see a lot. He wants to implement bee stuff on his beehive, and he's not a designer, he's not an electronician. So he needs easy tools to make his own solution and after that to resell it. And I think right now what our biggest problem is that if we want to allow these billions of devices, etc., to actually happen, is that we have to make life of our partners as easy as possible on every single task to make sure that we have the same revolution that we had in the internet, on the Internet of Things in in next couple of years, and on the hardware side. It's really started to come. We have companies, and I've seen startup, for example, you go on their website, you say, I want this kind of sensor, I want this, I want Sigfox or LoRa, I want an antenna. You click push, and actually it's going to do the whole device by itself and 3D print the whole thing and deliver it to you. So you just made your own device in a couple of minutes. This is what innovation is about, and I think this is what is lacking a bit today. How we can make all these use cases, which are incredible in the long tail, a reality is by actually making it more accessible and by giving us, by giving them simple, very simple technology.
I think what you're referring to is this, that you're looking for this analogy where you had this fragmentation and it's like centralizing into standards. And so I think for Internet of Things, it would be really nice if that was true. But in the internet, it's a bit simpler. It's routers talking to routers and routers talking to basically screens, right? And the harsh reality of if we're trying to connect everything is that every object has different requirements. So there will be a fragmentation in connectivity, but the centralization or the where you see the convergence is that when the data hits the cloud, and there it's all the same. So if it's a Sigfox or an NB-IoT or otherwise, or the LoRaWAN package, on the platform it's the same data point. So going for that analogy, and even on the long term, do not really believe that there's going to be one thing. And also the framing of this panel is about a zero-sum game market thinking. It's not a Betamax versus what was the other one? Betamax, the video things we had. So it's not one or the other, right? So it's together growing the market, and I think the common issues is of like how we're trying to realize all of us the big IoT dream. I think there's way more common challenges. So we have 7.5 billion people in the world, where only 20 million can know how to program, and only 1 million knows how to do something with hardware. So this group of people is not enough to fulfill the big IoT dream. So one, no, I don't believe in the analogy with the internet that you will solve this fragmentation, because the real world is fragmented. And second of all, I don't think we have the capacity to leverage this IoT dream in the next year at all with all the because we don't have enough programmers. So yeah, I think that analogy will not.
I mean, we're all pro standard. We like, our John Deere to go from country to country, and in all 50 countries, they really need to expect exactly the same. And, if we have a neutral host, a neutral gateway somewhere in the building, we want all operator NB-IoT LTM devices to be able to connect to it. So, but I definitely hear the kind of the whole challenge of getting the IoT, from that design and prototype. Here's the idea, how to make it simple. And I mean, for some, what we see is interesting. So we have Arduino here on our stand, Mobile IoT Innovator stand. We just want to make it sort of simple for those who are already there and using these devices. We want to make sure that there's familiarity. It needs to be as simple as, a mobile network is there. Then you can just boost that ecosystem of apps and any sorts of solutions that are just using the network without thinking. I think it should be a commodity, right? It's there. You shouldn't need to think, is it or not? You should just concentrate on that solution that you are trying to build. And yeah, I think we still have quite a way to go. We're very, very early stages. We see quite a lot of growth. We're going commercial. So I think that pilotitis kind of starting to go away. So we've done a survey in the enterprise sector, and we asked how many of you have implemented IoT. 60% said, yeah, and we're going to deploy more. And I think only about 4% said, oh, we tested it and we're not going to go ahead. So I don't know what didn't work there. But majority are still planning to deploy a lot more. But we also ask them, so how many devices have you deployed? And they're still low volumes. I mean, there are companies who come to us for million orders, but majority are going 100, 1,000 devices, even less if this is just a startup. And so I think there is quite a way to go to kind of build up those orders. Because also LPWA, it's a scale game. The more you have, the better your costs. The more familiarity. So yeah, that's the challenge that we need to keep going.
Well, I obviously agree with most of the things you said before, especially that probably the comparison between the internet and the Internet of Things, it's not perfect in the sense that the use cases you can find when you want to connect a device are much, much more than ones that you had when someone wants to connect to internet using their laptops. At the end, you are in the office, maybe you are around and connect over 4 to 5G, or you are at home. But the IoT can be everywhere, so once there will be a lot of different use cases with different requirements, we will need different technologies to cover that use cases. But I also fully agree that the key is to make it simple. I think that all people here actually are having Arduino options to connect over our networks. This means that mostly we have understood this challenge, which is make IoT simple. But as Binke was saying, this is not enough because even Arduino, which is very simple, requires some skills that it's just for a part of the population of the world. And we need to find some way to make it even more simple. And once we solve that equation, it will be a lot of different protocols coexisting, because there is also a big convergence on the cloud part. So all these different protocols can connect to the same platforms. And at the end, what you want is to get the data, is where the value is. And this is happening on the cloud. The way we connect those devices and their data to internet, I think can be very, very various different protocols working together.
Yeah, of course, there's a lot of new business, no, with the data, etc., and managing all this huge amount of data, etc. And maybe, I don't know, because it's quite new for some of your companies, but it seems that there's a movement that, of course, in the Things Network is from the beginning. That is that you can be part of the network and you provide some network. Let's say this way. With 5G, people is talking about femtocells and nanocells that, in a brief, I can buy it and put in my house, and I enhance the coverage of this 5G at home. Sigfox is starting with this movement. I don't know if Always is trying to do this kind of movement of providing.
Yeah, well, the way that the WISE protocol works is pretty similar to LoRa, actually. So you can either use existing infrastructure from others, or you can create your own infrastructure. So we have this mix of both business models, operated or self-operated. And actually, I think that we are all them following what you just said. So
here the question is if you think that there's a new business model around giving this new coverage or something like that. I mean that, okay, I can buy a gateway from Sigfox, one from LoRa, one from Centocell, and one from WISE, and I can be a kind of provider, something like that.
I mean, to be completely honest, sorry, yeah, you can hear me. To be honest, I mean, for us, this, you can be part of the coverage. It's more an extension for be able to develop it, so just to put it in your farm or whatsoever. But most of our customers are industrials. They are like Peugeot, they are like Total and Airbus, etc. They don't want to manage their own base station. They don't want to do that on their own. For some of the, especially on the tracking project, because they can't put base station on the roads, So they still need to rely on an industrial, grade, like a protocol with the network which is already there for most of the thing. And then we provide extra just to cover where there is no public coverage to make sure they still can do it on their own in deep factories or whatsoever. But when you look at, I mean, especially maybe it's really only for Sigfox, but as the use case we have are traveling around the world and they go from one factory to another, etc. I mean, you can't really rely on just a network built by yourself. It would be too costly, and then everybody would do its own. I mean, it wouldn't make any sense. So you have one public network, and then you add extra, either for your own use case. I mean, I can't say the name, but we have some brands, for example, who put Sigfox base station in their shops to be sure that the device, is actually working when we launch it, etc. We have this kind of needs, or for development purposes. If you are in a country where you don't have an operator, you still want to do like a device, you buy one of his base stations. But for us, it's more extra coverage.
I think that so the important thing is that, as we said before, is that Internet of Things world is very harsh. It's a lot of different problems. That's why we need very flexible software and very flexible deployment configurations to solve all these different problems. So you need, and that means that as I'm an integrator or product builder, on various levels, I need to be able to make a buy or build decision, and not only being forced to buy. And then for every vertical or every application, you can build the same configuration. So how LowEnd taps into that is that makes sure that all these different configurations make sure that they use the same protocol, and the interoperability between these different configured networks is still the same, so that devices can work across all these different configurations. So it's really delivering a very, very flexible platform to provide that piece of connectivity for the CFO, that he has a flexibility in CAPEX, OPEX, for the CTO, that he have flexibility, okay, what do I want, what level of quality of service do I want, what level of security do I want, and then really pick and choose while maintaining the interoperability. And yeah, that is a bit what our vision in that is, and I think it's important because we just know so little about how this is going to look like in 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, from where we see the mobile networks deployed is in very high density environments. So I mean, the factories, the the stadiums, and so on. And then they do deploy quite a variety. So it could be something really properly high broadband to deal with the entertainment and so on. But they also then install the low power sensors to make sure that they can still do the asset tracking and things like that. And to be honest, then after that, it varies by company. So some of them do have their own have their own servers and platforms and so on. And we're just happy to feed the data into that. And they're very careful that the data doesn't leave their perimeter of their factory, for example. So they're very conscious of the data security and so on. And I think that's fine. But equally, we've seen also operators partnering and kind of developing platforms that they then white label, and they can offer either a managed service and so on. I guess the trick is that the needs of these companies are so different, as the guys here mentioned, is that it's kind of important to make sure that they've got whatever they need available. But on the data, yeah, I think we need to actually do a fair bit more work to make sure that the data formats and semantics are all starting to work together, and the open source type of approaches are starting to take shape, and the open API approaches are starting to take shape. There's a lot of discussions, and that's kind of one of the areas of focus for us, is to make sure that when this data is generated, and for some of these projects you can benefit actually, some of them just want it secure and just for their own use, but some of them, like cities, do want to make sure that whatever comes in is actually interoperable, compatible, they can mix and match this data. And that's one of the areas where we're working, because we don't think it's quite there yet. It's complicated. If one of your trees was tagged with one little Excel cell and the other tree got in a different format, and this one is temperature in Celsius and in Fahrenheit, and you would have thought that the industry had solved it by now, but I think we're not there yet. We need to do more.
Well, in our experience, talking about this operated infrastructure and this shared infrastructure, business-wise, most of the companies are more interested in operated networks, mainly because, the companies that operate networks know that this is a tough work. It's not just installing devices, making them work, making them secure. So it's not that easy. And the companies usually their value proposition is not the network itself, it's just a tool. So they just prefer to hire this service to a company. But I see that of course, there is some cases where there is no coverage and create your own network makes sense. But the idea of a shared network as the Think network is doing, I think it's something that came here to stay because for a lot of people, especially for citizens, make a lot of sense. They are trying to connect things in a very close environment, not just connecting things everywhere. And the shared economy is actually a trendy, not just about IoT, but will affect for sure IoT. So I think that this will stay in the future also.
Okay, so thank you. Time is up,
Okay.
so we finished. Thank you for your thoughts and for sharing your ideas and for being here. Thank you to all the audience, and that's all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.